Are people or music people, musicians, are they born with natural music abilities, or is it strictly routine and practice, or some combination of the above? So, Micah, you started studying music and playing in your teenage years. What year, rough, remind me? How
Yeah,
old were you?
I went to a liberal arts kind of liberal kind of school. We were required, forced to play music. So I actually started playing music when I was very young. I was like 5, Started with the flute, and
Yes.
then quickly on to the viola, and then piano and viola combined. Then the clarinet, saxophone, drums. Then I got to high school and I played the drums. I picked up the guitar my junior year, but I was in choir during high
So
school.
you
So
were 16-ish?
kind of,
Yeah.
yeah. When I got serious on music, I was about 16, but I had a pretty wide foundation of playing music
Yeah, how
when I
many
was a
people
kid.
can say they've played the viola?
Yeah, the viola, not a ton.
Viola. How
Not a
many
ton.
people can say what the viola is?
Yeah, how many people can pronounce it right? At least
Yes.
one of us right now. Darren, I'll tell you, I'll give my answer, but
Yeah.
I'm curious for your answer first, because without impeding and infringing upon it, what do you think?
I think it's about 60-40, to where it's discipline, practice, routine, and I do think 40% of it comes from a natural ability, not so much to understand the science of it, but be able to create melodies and hear melodies and produce something creative. I think there is some folks who are born that are more natural about that. I think of the movie about Elton John's life, and there's a scene where he's a kid, or at least young, and he walks in on a piano teacher, and the piano teacher is playing a very complicated piece of music. Elton sits down and repeats it right off the bat, and then he stops midstream. And the teacher said, "How come you stopped?" And he said, "Well, this is as far as you went." Meaning he heard it right there and recreated it. I do think those people exist. I think they're few and far between.
Mm-hmm.
However,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a hybrid, which is kind of a lame answer, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it's I think it's an incredibly disciplined profession, and I think it's more on the discipline and practice and dedication than it is natural.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's a good answer. I think if we're talking strictly musicians too, we can kind of separate vocals and the human voice.
That's
I think
excellent
you
point.
you
Yes.
kind of are. I think there's a clear and obvious distinguishing scale on the human voice with some people, and of people that are just amazing vocalists when they kind of start, but that's unique to each person, and it doesn't diminish the amount of work that puts into theirs. Also, you have like a unique voices sometimes can be great even though they're not perfect. But let's take kind of on the musician side
I
of it.
agree with that. Yes,
Yeah.
that is a sidecar conversation, but yes.
Yeah. Yeah, when I got into this, I kind of had a hypothesis. My hypothesis was like, um, you know, in order to be a basketball player, you just have to be tall.
Right.
You have to be over 6'1" at least, but
Yeah.
like probably got to be taller. The taller you are, the better odds you got.
Mm-hmm.
And then football, you kind of naturally have to run at 6'4" and be this, 4'6", 40 and be this big and do all these things. You need a certain amount of gifts. You're just not going to be playing football if you run a 5'2". Maybe if you're a lineman, but you need those. So I had a hypothesis when I got into teaching over about 15 years ago that anybody could do music, though. And anyone can do music. It seems like it would just be a discipline. So as I've gotten further and further along, I will say there is absolutely, it's harder to quantify the ability of a gifted or born gifted musician than, say, a big athlete, because you can just see it, you
Right.
know. But there are many people, adults included, that never nurtured it, and kids included that are nurturing it, that have a natural proclivity towards it. I saw a really good write up, and I'll tell you, a lot of the times I'll take the dedicated person. I'll take the person that puts in countless hours of time, because no matter how gifted you are, it takes a certain amount of time. But I have noticed a sliding scale of things that take people a certain amount of times, and sometimes others are faster. And it is hard to quantify why and how, because it's dexterity, small muscle movements in the hand, and my big quantification, or my big instrument is guitar, so that's where I really have the most experience of watching people learn. But something I've been really interested with is, one, watching people that I know have a longer learning curve. We'll just put it at that. It's like a longer learning curve. I've kind of noticed that most people can do just about anything. If you talk to Eddie Van Halen, I'm sure he would be like, there was no lack of hours put in, you know?
Right.
I'm kind of just being on a tangent here a little bit. But I've noticed people that, just have regiment and dedication out past somebody that maybe has a faster scale and doesn't know how to, correlate that into a routine that functions really well, even though we talk about routines.
Yeah,
and do
hours, straight hours doing something and routine and structured
Period.
practice are not the same thing.
Period. Yeah, 100%. Proper and good routine and practice. So, anyways, my answer on the one, I have a twofold answer. On the one side is absolutely. I've seen it just like sports. There are people that are just naturally, seemingly a bit more gifted, and they function, and their learning curve is shortened.
Right.
Around that. Now, music is is very mathematical and a bit like, hey, this functions like this. You can solve it. Like, you don't have to be gifted to solve music. You can be extremely talented at music. The other side, though, that I noticed that's like the human voice that is also very hard to quantify, but a very real thing, is creativity. And that is something there's not really a roadmap to teaching that. There's,
Just like in sports, you can't teach quickness.
and you can't teach improv of like making three people miss and then, doing the exact right thing at the right time.
Right.
So, when I look at let's look at I was thinking, you asked me this yesterday real quick, and I was like, just letting it circle around in my mind. I was thinking of somebody like John Mayer. I don't think anyone ever thought John Mayer was the most gifted person. When he came out, he had a song that was kind of cheesy. It was either you hated it or you loved it. His guitar was okay. His voice is a little whispery. And his songwriting in that song was fine. It was like a poppy fun song. Now what do people say about John Mayer? And he's 40 years old. What do
They
we
say
now?
one is the top guitarist on the planet right now.
And there's a person that I saw just continue to work at it. And he naturally has, now I think he's a naturally gifted songwriter at the heart of what he does. And that just got better and better and better. But I watched him cultivate it. I watched him really work at it and really build that songwriting up. Another one is like David Gilmour. Nobody would ever say David Gilmour was the fastest. But the reason he's in the top 20, top 10 is because how many guitarists can hold you for 13 minutes? I mean, how many guitarists can be creative and in their touch and their tone to keep you there? So those are artists that I feel like worked very hard and were naturally creative. Eddie Van Halen too. I mean, he brought around a whole new generation of how to play the guitar. He tapped and he turned backwards and he hid from people.
That is true.
How do you teach that? So my answer to the question is, everybody can be very good at music.
Right.
Period. If you have a regiment, you're consistent, 18 minutes a day, man, 25 minutes a day, you can get extremely good at anything.
Yeah, I heard a stat, and again, you're listening to the Darren Micah Show. It is Tuesday, October 24th on Wimberley Valley Radio. I heard a stat online, so it's true. Yeah, if you practice something 18 minutes a day for a year, you're in the top 5% of the people on the planet on that.
You
thing.
probably will, and like if you're talented, you might be more, and if you got a little bit of work, it might be a little less. But
part of I definitely think creative people are born creative, and creativity is very hard to quantify, and it's hard to prove. And as a result of that, people don't value it, and that's where my world of marketing, your world of music, come together because the creativity part of it comes natural to people, so therefore there's a devaluation of the specialness of it, which is unfortunate.
It's funny. I find that like the opposite.
Really?
In music. Well, it's totally opposite.
Music, it's not in marketing, man. I think when unique ideas come quickly. It's just an idea. It's not a tangible transactional thing. So people don't value it as much.
The speed at which it comes to, I think sometimes people can devalue, and that's a funny thing too, because I always say like I'll pay the person the most to get it done the fastest and the best.
So my favorite thing in business is good, fast, and cheap. You get
Yeah.
two of the three. You can
Yeah.
have a good and fast, but it ain't gonna be cheap.
And I'll tell you,
can have
good
cheap
and
and fast,
fast,
but it ain't gonna be good. Right, that whole
good
thing.
and fast is very hard to come by.
Yes, it is.
Great and fast is very rare to come by. But I'll tell you, we don't in music. We actually devalue the rigid professional because, this really needs to change.
I think it's more than devalue. I think it's a complete lack of knowledge for
Yeah.
people that aren't in it or don't try it.
I mean, I
don't
think,
even think it's devalue. I think the people, the average person sitting around listening to a person play around a winery or a restaurant or bar don't have the slightest idea it took that person 10 years to learn how to perform in front of you.
and and like a real good example of something that I would like to see change over the years, and I'd like to pioneer this if and when I'm, as I'm producing songs, if any of them really take off, circling back and finding a way that, none of these songs are possible without the musicians, and they typically get paid $100, $200.
I know, it's
to
ridiculous.
lay that down, and then if that song blows up, that's you out.
Yeah.
And that there is true creativity that went into that practice, and I think we have a tendency to but if you're a songwriter and you're a producer, you get royalties for life.
Yeah.
And so, but that is valuing the creativity side, right? Because the idea is that you can't just be a songwriter. I'd like to see music become, it's going to need to in order to keep surviving. Really it is. But it needs to spread a bit over a wider cast net and capture people, everybody along the way and in the process. Problem is, music is a hard business. But anyways.
So again, we are discussing, are people born with natural music ability or is it routine and practice? A couple more thoughts on this. We're calling it a mad discussion for Mike and Darren. And again, thanks for listening. So part of this discussion, I think, centers around on what level of musicianship you want to be. And me as a person who has taken lessons for the last 4 years in guitar, there are levels of mastery of guitar, and that is true with piano or violin or viola or flute or anything else. And it is very attainable and respected then if you want to learn the 7 essential chords in guitar, mostly open chords, then you could play 1,000 songs, and you would get the strumming pattern.
You got to know some you got to know some rhythm. You got to learn rhythm, right hand, left hand.
And then you can probably get pretty good in a year and a half's time if that is your goal line.
Yeah, my threshold for to be able to be okay, you can play music and you can potentially go play out is anywhere from a year and a quarter to 3 years.
Yeah, well, and to be clear, what I'm talking about is learning songs, having a steady rhythm, and knowing what some people call the 7 essential chords. Most of them are open chords, and you can play just about every Green Day song. You can play tons of country songs with them, and you could be the hit at the party. And that is a level that is attainable, and it takes discipline. But if you're going to be a person who plays with a band, or other musicians, records music, that is
kind of a
whole other world,
another level.
And if you're going to perform, then you got to learn about the electronics and the soundboards and the mixing and monitors and all those things. That's a whole other world that takes trial and error and practice and regimen as well too. So it is that part of it is incredibly disciplined and routine based, and you have to be committed. And you have to be in for the long haul. Or you're going to be frustrated and quit.
There's so many thresholds to many things. Like music has all these different barriers of entry, we'll call them. But if you just want the one, I like the one. Hey, I just want to be able to play this instrument. We'll keep using guitar as an example, but I think there's a year. Again, it's the consistency. If there's one thing that I can preach, it's the understanding of how you learn and how your body functions. It is science, okay? This is not, we're not making anything up. Your body moves because we do what, Darren?
We tell it to.
Yeah, that's right. We think.
Yeah.
Our body moves because we think about it. So if you want to get good at anything in life, and using guitar as that example, and how I teach, I love this method. Your hand and your brain are two really good friends, but your hand is slow and your brain is really fast, and they're best buddies when they work together and they're worst enemies when they work separate. So what you have is you have to create kindness and consistency.
Yeah.
And consistency is number one, and just being patient with yourself. We're always so far in front of ourselves, but if you get in that cycle of like, okay, I'm going to learn at the pace of my hand, so I'm going to think it through with my brain, and I'm going to go slow enough that my hand can get it, you will see unbelievable results at really anything that you want to do, frankly, across the board in life, but in style of music and these muscle memory control arts. It's really fun to watch. So you got to go, you learn at the pace of your hand, and you be nice to yourself, because when your hand can't get it fast enough, your brain has a tendency to be frustrated and make fun of your hand. But if you go slow, then what happens is your hand goes, hey, wait, I got it. Your brain goes, oh, you did get it. And then you learn that cycle and you roll it around.
I would say the greatest barrier has definitely been patience. Mike, how much longer do we have on
patience
this?
is tough. We're doing pretty good. Really quick to circle that back. So what I've noticed is the most talented, or these like naturally gifted, that brain to hand correlation. That's what I've noticed. Like that thing adjusts faster.
Yeah.
I can tell them something real quick, just like the Elton John thing or something, and they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, you got it. And the hand like functions, and then they're like, let's go forth. And I'm like, let's just spend a minute, and then we'll spend a minute, and then they kind of have it. And then it's like, okay, we'll go to the next. And then someone that really struggles with that maybe takes time.
Well, it's funny. It's not funny, but it's interesting that you mentioned Eddie Van Halen. So just being a big fan of his, I know that part of the reason he got so good is because he was disciplined, because when he moved here as a little kid, he didn't speak English, right? And so he spent 6 hours a day in his room playing guitar, because he didn't have any friends, and and practicing as a 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old. Plus he had two parents who were music teachers, which helped. But
doesn't hurt.
Yeah, and his dad was like classical composer type guy.
Doesn't hurt.
Yeah, and then the other one too is a guy who lives in Texas, a world-class guitarist, Monty Montgomery. And so he was raised in a very hippie gypsy family where they literally drove around the state in a van. That's how he grew up. And so,
so he never had like connections.
He never
his
had
guitar
that.
Was his,
he didn't play Little League Baseball and video games on that.
Yeah.
And I've heard him interview. He played guitar for 8 hours a day.
I can tell you right now,
which I know is extreme. But when you're a lonely kid living that gypsy lifestyle with his parents, and you got to do something.
Yeah.
And that's those things were available to those two guys.
I will say too, and like if you want, like using myself is kind of a fun example, because I've thought of this many times. I've been like what are you naturally gifted at? Like I have always seen myself as a songwriter. I naturally can write music really fast. I mean, since I was the second I picked up a guitar, I was writing songs, and my best buddies and friends who've been playing music for downtown for years were like, dude, what? And I was just like writing really good songs. I have never seen myself as a naturally gifted guitarist, and it's been something that I've always pondered. So I've been on the both sides of that spectrum, and around guitar, I would say I'm a really good guitarist. I'm a really good guitarist, but I would never consider myself a great guitarist by any means. But I had to create a really regimented practice around guitar.
So what you're saying is, whatever guitar skill level that you're at, you think that part has primarily been discipline.
I would say it's 100% discipline.
Okay.
And I'm a naturally coordinated person. I was very athletic in school, very quick, but that doesn't correlate to your hand. It's very like the way your fingers work. It might correlate to your hand for catching a ball or shooting a basketball. There's something different in the way these fingers both function. What's
odd with me, my finger dexterity is horrible. I've broken every one of my fingers with my left hand. And you can see my knuckle on my left hand is just beat to all get out. When I first started taking lessons with you, I was actually quite worried about that, because my finger dexterity is not that great. Yeah. Playing guitar has made my finger dexterity way stronger than it used to be. I can thread needles now, which 5 years ago I couldn't do.
It's funny. Yeah. You look at people too, like, I don't know if you know who Red Volkart is. He's one of the best guitarists in Austin, Texas. He played on Merle Haggard stuff and everybody else, a bunch of Grammys, plays around town. But anyone that tells me like, oh, my hand's too small or this, I'm like, go watch Red Volkart. His fingers are like an inch long. Yeah. They're just like the tiniest little fingers I've ever seen in my life.
And the lead singer and lead guitarist for Green Day, Billy Joe, what's his last name? Billy Joe.
I was
Whatever.
It's
starts
right
with-
on my. It's right.
Oh,
Billy
Oz-
Joel's fine.
Oz-
Billy Joel's fine.
Anyway, Billy Joe, the lead singer of Green Day. Have you ever seen his hand? His hands are so small that when he plays the power chord,
Yeah, he just lays it all
most
down.
people play your index and your ring finger that stretches across 2 frets. He plays with his index and his pinky.
Yeah.
Because his hands are so small.
So
it's
tiny.
so weird
Yeah.
looking.
Yeah.
So look, I can't even wear my wedding ring because I've messed my ring up so bad in indoor soccer. And, I played football and sports and basketball, and they've all been busted to Hades and back. And so if I can do it, anyone can.
I'll tell, and circling around, we're just going to end up having this conversation today. But for anyone out there that either has had music as part of your life, wanted music as part of your life, or has always kind of like on and off the switch, we'll kind of finish it with the concept around like, can you attain? Because we're always trying to like, can we attain music?
Right.
100 million. Yes is the hard answer. I mean, so achievable. It's so achievable, and that doesn't diminish how unbelievably hard it is.
Right.
And that's like,
just because something's achievable doesn't mean it's easy.
I'm going to release a guitar thing here soon enough. And it's, instead of, I'm so sick of seeing these messages, learn guitar in 5 minutes and stuff. It's going to be
the worst. Or unlock the fretboard without learning scales.
Without learning anything.
Dumbest thing ever.
I'm going to start one that's basically like, are you sick of being marketed these really cheesy? It's 18 minutes a day. It's very difficult, but it's very attainable.
Listen,
it's very
as a
easy.
professional marketer and a guy who took his first guitar lesson when he was 50 years old, this idea that you can learn to solo without scales, stop it, Mark, guitar players.
Yeah.
That's nonsense.
So start
So dumb.
start anything in music today. Find yourself consistency, and you'll have everything you want. And by 6 months, 2 months, 6 months, it compounds and it's beautiful and it's really fun. And something that has been very special to me that I've watched through students is that no matter what, because we say, gifted musician, I have found actually that everyone excels at some part. So like you,
Of the
Darren,
music spectrum you're talking
so like
about,
you, Darren, do actually very well with lead soloing, and you take it for granted, and you think because you want some other things too, right? And so like. Yeah, so like timing is something that we've worked on, but like you are naturally a wonderful E player, and you get the theory and the concepts, and you're seeing how the shapes move, and like I can tell you right now that is not the case for everyone. That's about maybe a quarter of my students, and then some other people really excel at rhythm and timing, and they're great at rhythm playing. And then every once in a while I'll get somebody that is naturally really a good singer, and it doesn't mean a good voice. It means being able to sing with while they're playing, which is extremely difficult. And then I'll get other people that do really well with finger picking. But they don't do very good with a pick.
Which is so crazy.
Yeah. So I have found across the spectrum is that you have to find what you are.
Right.
Because we are all something. One, what are you? Are you a guitarist? Are you a pianist? Are you a vocalist? Are you a drummer? Are you a bassist? Everybody kind of has a leaning, I have found. And then you have to find what you are in that spectrum. So like, maybe you're a bit more of a singer-songwriter. Maybe you're a bit more of a lead guitarist. Maybe you're a bit more of a rhythm. This is why we have what we call a band. It's
that's why we have a marketing team.
That's
some
right.
people are better writers.
That's
some
right.
people are better technical, analytical people.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, we really yammered, Darren. Thanks for letting me just kind of talk away today.
Yeah,
Hopefully
I enjoy
people
it.
find this interesting. If you're interested in music, go out and get it. Start today and be consistent. If you can, I would highly recommend having a professional support you for a little while. Their job is to build structure and a little bit of clarity, but also help figure out who you are, and we need to learn how you learn. It's the same tools. There's about 10 of them in the toolbox. But if you don't know how you learn those tools, you will struggle, and you will constantly put that thing that you've always wanted to do away. I've worked with people from 0 to 70 years old. Pretty much everyone I've worked with has achieved some level of really enjoyable happiness around their instrument, if not more than that. But it takes understanding who and how you are and what you learn. We'll catch you guys next time on 94.3 FM KWVH Wimberley Valley Radio here on the Darren and Micah Show. I had a lovely time. Hopefully this was fun, informative, educational.
Bring candy. Bring
and
candy to the station.
We want candy. Till next time.